This is a guided setup for SOOTHSAYER 1.8 on Ubuntu with Docker. On this box here, we're working on a bare metal gaming PC. You can also install this on a VM with GPU pass-through. Before you can begin, you need to make sure that you have an Nvidia driver. So we have a card here, and we have this driver 535 and CUDA 12.2. You're going to need the container toolkit to pass through the card to the Docker environment, and we have a script to set that up for you in the Docker repo. Once you've received the code, you need to unpack it. So we're going to unpack it into this folder here, which we've created. We've decompressed it, and now we're going to CD into the SOOTHSAYER Docker folder. In this folder, we have the code, the config, our data folder where all our terrain data and calculations will live once we start using it, and a README. So let's cat that README and see what we need to do. First of all, we need to install the container runtime with this script here, scripts nvidia.sh docker. If you're using Podman, change that for Podman at the end. We've already done that on this environment, so we can proceed to the setup. The setup script is right here, script setup docker. Copy this command. If you're in the Docker group, and we are, then you can run this without sudo. So run script setup docker. It's going to use Docker Compose to build the images. Some of this is already cached, so this setup will be quicker than a standard setup. How long your setup takes depends on your internet speed. Could be anywhere from a few minutes up to an hour. There's at least 7 images that need building. Some are small, some are very large, and so there's a lot of dependencies to install. One of the advantages of using Docker is that we can keep all these dependencies up to date. You can just rebuild and fetch the latest libraries. Okay, it's finished building the containers, and now it's setting up data. Once it's done the containers, you'll see the containers are brought up, and then it starts to populate the database with a database migration script. It does this in chronological order to bring an old database up to spec, not just with new data, but a data structure, because the table structures evolve over time. So you'll see lots of statements such as these that are being executed and updating the tables and inserting data. In this case, this is metadata for different tiles for global buildings data and terrain, land cover, LiDAR. Once the data's in there, it can then have awareness of those tiles, and you can fetch the tiles from our API, or you can sideload the tiles into a folder and work offline. This is just installing packages into the API. Now finally we're done. So that took a few minutes. We have a login which has been presented here, which has been reset. The default username is SOOTHSAYER and a random password is here. So we're going to use that in a minute. First of all, we need to go and access the admin dashboard. So this is where an administrator licenses the software and prepares user accounts. So let's bring in a browser and go and visit this URL in this browser. We can't connect because the Docker containers are down. So to bring the environment up from the folder where you're working, you can run Docker Compose up, and if you want to fork it to the background, add -d. So we're going to do it interactively so we can see what's going on. So bring the containers up, and you'll see lots of messages. You'll see messages about Nvidia drivers, so this is the engines, checking they have a driver and a container runtime, so they do, because they can see the driver. We're checking a license here. So the GPU engine and the 3D engine have found a license, and we can now access that. I can't get to localhost because I am on a different box. So I'm on a different computer here, which is preventing me getting to the address that was offered. So what I'm going to do is put in the actual IP address of this computer, because we're working remotely. And now we've found a web server and have received a security warning. So the warning is because it is a self-signed certificate. So you need to have a look at the certificate, satisfy yourself that this is us. So Farage Consulting Limited, that is the legal name for CloudRF. And you can now accept the risk and go ahead and log in to Soothsayer. You need that password that was shown to you earlier. So let's go ahead and get that. And now we can sign in. So we can see that we have a Soothsayer admin dashboard with updated components. It's not licensed. We have a device ID, which is unique to your install to the host. So to get a license, to get this thing running, we need to send this device ID to support@cloudrf.com with your order details. You will be given a license file, which you will upload here. We've uploaded a license key there. Click upload, successfully uploaded license. License is validated. This is valid for 1 year to us, for 10 people. And if we go to the users now, we can now see 10 user accounts that we can set up. So I'm going to call this one user1 password for the login. Click save when you've updated a password. The login will just open a new tab here. The login for users is here, so a user can log in with those credentials. And you can see at the bottom here, this is licensed for 10 seats. So the user has logged in. So far so good. However, if you look at the top right corner, you'll see there's no little green light next to the API and there's no color key. And if you open up the menus here, you'll see that some of them are missing data. So these are all clues that we're not actually connected to the API. And the reason is, earlier, the default FQDN for this server was localhost. And we had to change that and log in at the IP address, which we've done here. So we need to go into the dashboard, find the FQDN, and change it. And we're going to change it to the IP address in this case. So we've now updated the FQDN for the API because we're wanting to use this on a network and share it beyond localhost. So now, if I reload, we now have a green light next to the API. We've got color key, we've got environment profiles, and we have antennas. So this Soothsayer is now connected to the API. And if I just make this browser a little bit smaller, because what we're going to do is just do a quick test using the path tool, click on the hill over there, and did that one very quickly, but there was no data because we asked it to work offline. So if we want to fetch some data, we can revert that back to api.cloudrf.com, and now it will go and fetch the data. There's a delay this time because it's going to the UK to fetch the tiles. It's installing the tiles into the back end, and you can watch it do this from the console. And there you see not just terrain, but you see land cover and buildings. So it's fetched that data, and now the next time I do it, it'll be faster because we already have the data. So that Soothsayer is licensed for 10 people, it's working, and we're fetching data.